Ahoy! A lot of you have been asking me to talk about SMITE 2, and today I will. But maybe not in the way that you may have expected, because there are really bad news surrounding SMITE. If you follow news surrounding SMITE, then you may be aware that there was a round of layoffs not too long ago, and now a second wave of layoffs happened just yesterday. This layoff comes in the context of them shutting down all of their current esports operations and basically laying off their entire esports team. But they're not just laying off the esports team, they're also laying off other people entirely unrelated to that. It's just another massive layoff across the entire studio. Once again, many of the people let go have been there for a really long time, basically the foundations of SMITE at this point, and most of them are extremely passionate about the game, and some even progressed through the company very quickly, so it's really surprising to see these layoffs. Just to mention a couple of names you may be familiar with, the layoffs included Lermy Wormy, Ro, Agro, Gormizer, Trelly Rally, Rollycat, Cooper, Smeek, who used to go by Mifflin, Skeleton, and Just Strix. Hazer made a full list of everyone affected, I will link that down below. First of all, my sympathy goes out to everyone affected by this. I've reached out to some of the people I know better personally, but also as a general statement here, I think layoffs like these are absolutely brutal every single time and almost never necessary, extremely frustrating, extremely dangerous for the people affected by them. So yeah, I just don't have anything smart to say about it, I just think it's horrible. While the gaming industry is extremely fragile at the moment, I hope that for everyone this can turn out to be an opportunity to end up in a better place than where they're working at previously. But of course, all of this opens up the question why this happened in the first place, because it's not really normal for a company to do two massive layoffs within a time span of roughly 4 months. And the first person to look at here is of course HiRez, who was the one who made a public statement about the first round of layoffs. Since then, Stu has deleted his Twitter account. Originally it was speculated that maybe he did that just because he doesn't like Twitter anymore, as many others, but in the context of the second round of layoffs as well as the cancellation of any relevant pro league, it seems like he deleted it to avoid the backlash. But in his original statement, Stu said, "Letting them go is a heartbreaking decision, reflects on a failure in my leadership and one for which I take personal accountability." Now one could ask what taking personal accountability for a CEO looks like, if not stepping down. Maybe a large pay cut so that others can stay employed? Surely it's something like that. Well, we never found out, but what we did find out is that significant cutbacks were made on all other games that HiRez was still working on to some degree, except SMITE 2. What is somewhat confusing to me is if Stu was even the CEO for HiRez at this moment in the first place. Stu became the CEO in 2019 with HiRez stepping down. This was largely influenced, from my understanding, by the failure of Realm Royale. Realm Royale started out with a massive player base due to a Fortnite downtime when it launched and failed to capitalize on this early lead in any significant way, instead shaping the game however HiRez liked it the most based on what he had heard from his favorite streamers. But weirdly enough, there is another statement that you can still find on LinkedIn from Stu once again, where it was stated that HiRez was going to be the CEO of HiRez Ventures now, and Stu, who was previously the CEO of HiRez, would be the CEO of Rally Here Interactive, as well as the president of HiRez Ventures. And this is also his bio for a presentation he held at IQPC. And if you try to look up HiRez Ventures, it's mostly just articles about this particular post. HiRez Studios is still called HiRez Studios. Their website is still hirezstudios.com, and the copyright on that website is still to HiRez Studios. If you go on their About page, it still mentions HiRez Studios. So I'm going to assume that this is simply a way to move money or debt around or split up things in a way that's taxed at a lower rate or something. Some kind of classic corporate trick to lose less money somehow. But what this makes me question is if HiRez is even still officially in the position of CEO of HiRez, because based on that announcement, at least, it didn't sound like that. Yet still he seems to be the one taking responsibility in the post he made about the layoffs. Because otherwise, if HiRez Ventures is purely HiRez, then the CEO of HiRez is HiRez and not Stu. Which would then put HiRez exactly in the position that he previously stepped down from for Stu. And again, this was after very significant backlash. So maybe it's Stu taking responsibility in the position as president, or it's because HiRez removed his own Twitter quite a while ago, long before this all happened. It used to be Blue Orc, but it's been gone for ages. But why am I digging so deep into this in the first place? Raytheon made a post saying that this is more on HiRez and the board than anything because they would have the ability to fire the CEO if their company was underperforming and they wanted to shake things up. Based on what we're seeing here and these changes between the roles, I think things are more complicated than that. Somebody recently discovered that, for example, before Stu left Twitter, he dropped the CEO from his handle, which again may very well be true because he may just be the president now, but ultimately it seems that both Stu and HiRez are somewhat interchangeable. They seem to be so closely connected that they're kind of just doing things together, and Stu is the one who's front-facing all of this, but since they can just so fluidly shift between roles, even after one was kind of pushed out of one of the roles, just go back into that role, I can't really imagine that HiRez would ever seriously consider firing Stu. On the contrary, I think their approaches and their ideas for what HiRez and SMITE should be are likely very aligned if they've been sticking together so closely for so long at this point. If that means the company and the employees taking hit after hit, that so far seems to be okay for them. And other people in leadership do move around. For example, Véronique Lallier, who was the COO until last year and is still listed on the Wikipedia, actually moved to IO Interactive then. When HiRez first stepped down in 2019, he announced that he would be working in the healthcare industry instead, and at the time, Stu said in a statement that HiRez and him had been planning this reshuffle since 2014, since now the company is in good shape, so they're entering the next stage of growth, and therefore it was time to make changes in management. And yet, now HiRez seems to be back in the old position, and there were no changes in management because it feels like the two of them are entirely unwilling to give up any control of the company long term. So all in all, if you want to point fingers at the people responsible here, I think you need to point 2 fingers, not 1. Now, Raytheon speculates that this round of layoffs comes as a preparation to sell off the IP, which I think would probably be a positive, but personally can't imagine happening. This is because I think there's a combination of Stu and HiRez not wanting to let this project go, no matter how much it may end up bleeding at some point, and also SMITE probably not being an IP that would sell super easily because it's a MOBA, which is already a market that is struggling at the moment and that will have a big new competitor soon with Deadlock, so that would probably not be an ideal time to try and sell anyways. And let me be clear here, I am not ascribing malice to the people involved here, but rather incompetence. An incompetence that goes unpunished if you're in the right position within the typical corporate structure. As Stu himself says, you don't have to confront him with his failures, he has not forgotten them, but he's also never really suffered any consequences for them. And from what we know now, neither has HiRez, even though it used to look like it at some point. As for SMITE itself, I'd like to refer you to Clumsy's statement here. He said, I know there's a lot of hate and very good reasons to feel that, but please remember that there are still devs left. There's still a game we want to make great for the past and current devs and for the players. It's not that it's just hurting, it's not over. From all I know about him, Clumsy is a fantastic human being who is close to many of the people who got laid off, so this must hurt very personally for him. But realistically, as much as there shouldn't be hate coming towards the people working on the game or even the game itself, there's most certainly massive concerns for the future of the game at this point. SMITE 2's numbers for a game that just went into free-to-play are not looking good. It should be spiking like crazy right now, and it's doing barely better than New World. If it continues on this downward trajectory, it'll struggle within half a year. And the fact that there will be no competitive league and now many of the most passionate employees for this game have just been simply laid off without warning is most certainly not inspiring confidence in anyone who wants to invest into SMITE in any way. I bought SMITE 2 shortly after it became available because I wanted to support the devs and I also had hope for at least some potential and I wanted to try it out early to see what it's like. I've tried it multiple times since, and as a content creator I need to look at a game from how much potential has it for me, how much future potential does it have, can I make content about this consistently, and at no point have I felt that way. And with these developments that we're seeing at the moment, my hopes and expectations in that regard have dropped even further, significantly further. I would love nothing more than to be wrong here and for SMITE 2 to thrive, but with this second wave of layoffs, my hopes are basically non-existent. As much as Glassdoor is an unreliable source, I think it speaks for itself how many complaints about leadership, about the CEO and the handling of layoffs there are on there. It just does not seem like a work environment where the game could thrive. Once again, my heart goes out to all of the people affected by the layoffs. I hope you guys can land on your feet soon. Other than that, don't subscribe if you're just waiting for SMITE content, because I don't know if there will be another SMITE video. Maybe one at some point, we'll see. But either way, thanks for watching. Duke Sloth, out.